So, here we are on the interior of my new, I say new, it's more than a quarter of a century old as this car. This is my Subaru Forester. Doesn't come without its issues. Let's take a bit of drive. So I travelled 200 miles away to actually receive this car. I didn't pay any money for it. I did make a swap, and on my return journey, again 200 miles, I noticed some issues. Driving around the streets, it was fine. It drove really well, drove like a dream. However, doing a 200-mile journey, you're obviously going to land on one of the British motorways. They won't go this way. And as soon as you land on the motorway and put some power down to pick up some speed, the car was backfiring heavy. Pops, bangs, probably spitting flames out of that. I don't know. Don't want to know. So I've had to tether it home. Disappointingly. I had it in a garage pretty much immediately. There was no fault codes as such coming up on a normal OBD reader, but I knew it was misfiring, so I swapped the spark plugs out anyway. They were very black. They needed doing big time. So first job that needed doing. However, that did fix a lot of misfiring issues with the car, but I do still have a check engine light on my dash, which is definitely restricting the power of the car. I've plugged in some little cables underneath my dash, a little green cable, a little black cable, and the car itself, being a 1990s Subaru, has its own diagnostics, which I think is absolutely brilliant. And it tells me it got it says check engine, but the light flashes. So I've got 2 long flashes and then 2 short flashes, so that's 2 and 2, which makes 22 in this case. And code 22 indicates that there is an issue with a knock sensor. Not that the knock sensor is detecting a knock, but there is an issue with the sensor itself. So that is actually retarding the ignition of the car and not allowing it to be full power. As the car heats up, gets to optimum temperature after around 20 minutes or so, the car runs brilliant. So today I'm going to take a look under the bonnet. I'm going to get the old knock sensor out and let's get a new one in, shall we? So here we are underneath the bonnet of the Forester with the mission of fitting a replacement knock sensor to fix the error code 22 that we've been having. After locating the general whereabouts of the sensor, it becomes immediately apparent that there's a whole bunch of stuff in the way. So the biggest thing that will help to get access to the knock sensor is to remove the intercooler, the top of the engine bay there, so we'll start removing that. After removing the hoses for the throttle body and the turbo, as well as removing the bolts for the blow-off valve, it became apparent that the aftermarket strut brace at the top of the screen there is in the way of getting the radiator off easily. So I decided it'd be best to create a bit more room for myself by fully removing the hose that connects the intercooler to the throttle body. I later realised that this was probably unnecessary. With a bit more willpower and a bit more tug and pull, I could have pulled the intercooler off without actually taking off the extra components there. part we are trying to replace is in that hole where my finger is, and about another 6 inches deep down there, which is actually connected to this white cable that I've got hold of. As you could see there, that knock sensor is actually quite deep down in there. Even with the intercooler removed, it is a challenge to get access to it without the correct tools. With the socket extension I was using here, I was able to hook my socket onto the top of the bolt that I was holding the sensor in place. However, every time I attempted to turn the ratchet, the socket would literally just slip off the top of it. Just feeling around to see if there was any better options to get this bolt undone. Showing you there the thinner socket extension that I managed to get onto my ratchet. I got a better grip on the top of the bolt there. So that took some force to remove. I'm pretty sure those bolts aren't supposed to be as tight as that one was, but yeah, I was relieved that the bolt was finally loose. The bolt then took an attempt for its own life by diving deep down into the side of my engine bay, so I had to remove the under tray and get underneath the car to actually get access to fish the bolt out of there. So now that the old part is out, it's time to replace it with its younger brother. So a quick spray with some compressed air, and attempt to wipe any debris. Bit of tissue on the end of a tool, can't hurt it, can it? Now you may think the difficult part is over, but to get this knock sensor orientated back into the correct position took some patience. I was using this long screwdriver I had lying around, just to try and rotate the sensor into its correct position. I used a small bit of my daughter's Play-Doh stuffed into the end of my 12mm socket to stick onto the end of the bolt to get it back into place without dropping it into the engine bay again, but that was proving to be easier said than done. Of course, after a good half an hour wrestling match just to get the bolt back into place, the knock sensor was finally in the correct position. Still wrestling with it there on the video. The camera angle is not very good here, but yeah, you do have to have the knock sensor positioned correctly in order for it to actually work correctly. So that's why it's taking a little bit of manoeuvring. See, even with my leg up on the engine there, to try and get a better body angle to get out. Alright, it's in, tightened up. Time to put the rest of the car back together. Another wrestling match with another worthy opponent. Headache caused firstly by the hose to be connected to the turbo underneath the intercooler at the far side here, and afterwards by the hose that I previously decided to remove from the throttle body. This point is where I realised that it may not have been the best idea previously to remove that. You certainly don't have to remove that part at all. As you see, I end up removing the intercooler again just to put that hose back into place before round 2. But this time fighting against both the turbo hose and the throttle body hose at the same time. As you saw there, I took the intercooler back out to put the hose onto the throttle body. It made life a lot easier to do it in that order, rather than trying to squeeze that in between the intercooler and the throttle body afterwards. And there we go, intercooler is now in place, tightened down. So we defeated that guy. The last part is to put back the blow off valve and any other plugs that you may have previously removed. Now that it's all back together, obviously we'll get back in the car and check to see if we've solved our check engine light error. Success!